family needs you, son.
On the next episode of Dutton Ranch.
Whole Jackson family's crooked. They ain't ranchers. They're thieves.
I need you ready for the hard parts when they come. Because they're coming.
Bula just had a heart attack, and in one single moment, the entire power structure of the Dutton Ranch came crashing down. The woman who held this family together, the one who controlled every decision and stopped every war before it could start, is now lying in a hospital bed unable to protect anyone, including herself. And the second she went down, something inside this family broke loose that may never be put back together. Walkan lost everything he spent his whole life fighting for. Rip is being pulled into a war he never asked to be part of. And Rob Will, the man nobody in this family ever fully trusted, is suddenly the one holding all the power. So what happens now? Does Rob Will survive what is coming for him in episode 8? Or is this the episode where everything he built on lies finally collapses around him? Stay until the end, because I genuinely believe this episode changes the entire direction of this show. Episode 8 opens at the worst possible moment for almost everyone connected to this ranch. Bula is in the hospital after her sudden heart attack, and it feels like the show has been waiting for this exact moment to finally let years of buried tension explode out into the open. For so long, Bula was the glue holding this entire family together. She controlled every decision before it could spiral out of control. She settled conflicts before they turned into something worse. She was the wall standing between this family and total chaos. Now that wall is gone, even if only for now, and there is nobody left strong enough to hold Rob Will back from doing whatever he wants. This feels like the exact moment this entire season has been building toward, and I do not think Rob Will is ready for what is about to happen to him next. The first thing this episode focuses on is Waqeen, and what he decides to do with everything he has been holding on to after everything he sacrificed. After years of protecting this family without asking for anything in return, Bula still chose Rob Will over him when it mattered most. A man like Walkan does not just swallow that kind of betrayal and walk away quietly. He spent years cleaning up every mess Rob Will left behind, covering for him, protecting him, putting his own life on the line so that Rob Will could keep living without consequences. And now, with Bula unable to control anything from a hospital bed, Walkan finally has the freedom to do what he has wanted to do for a long time. Let Rob Will face the consequences on his own. But here is where things get complicated fast. Even if Walkan decides to hand over evidence connecting Rob Will to Wes's murder, that alone might not be enough to fully take him down. There is still one massive problem standing in the way of any real arrest, and it could completely change how this entire investigation unfolds. The body. Without Wes's body, there is no way for investigators to match anything physical to the crime. Without that match, even the strongest piece of evidence proves very little in front of a judge. I think Sheriff Wade is going to hit this wall almost immediately. Right at the moment it looked like Rob Will was finally cornered. This is where Walkan becomes far more important than most people realize. If Walkan knows anything about where Wes's body originally was, even before it disappeared completely, he may end up revealing that information to Sheriff Wade. And if that happens, the investigation suddenly shifts in a direction nobody saw coming, because the last place that body was ever seen connects directly back to Dutton Ranch property. That single detail could pull Rip into a situation he never wanted to be part of, and it is exactly the kind of twist that turns this episode from a simple power struggle into something far more dangerous for everyone involved. This is where episode 8 really raises the stakes, because Rip has spent years building his entire reputation on loyalty, on being the man who quietly handles whatever needs to be handled, so the rest of the family never has to face the consequences. He has done things that could destroy him if they ever came out, and he has done them without complaint, without hesitation, because protecting this family has always meant more to him than protecting himself. But now, with Walkan possibly pointing Sheriff Wade toward Dutton Ranch property, Rip is about to be forced into a corner he never imagined ending up in. If Sheriff Wade starts asking the right questions about how Wes's body actually disappeared, Rip is going to be staring down one of the hardest decisions of his entire life. Does he stay silent and risk the truth unraveling later in a way he cannot control? Or does he come forward now, before the truth gets dragged out of him by someone else? I do not think this is a decision Rip can avoid for much longer, and I believe this episode pushes him right to the edge of making that choice, whether he is ready or not. At the same time, while Rip is being pulled into this impossible situation, Beth is dealing with a crisis of her own. The business deal she worked so hard to put together is now hanging by a thread because of how much control Rob Will has suddenly gained over the ranch. Beth understands exactly how dangerous Rob Will becomes when he feels threatened, and she is not the kind of person who sits back quietly while someone destroys everything she has spent years building. This is where I expect Beth and Rip to start working closely together again, not just to protect the business deal, but to protect their entire family from a man who is becoming far more dangerous than anyone originally expected. The tension between Beth, Rip, and Rob feels like it is building toward a point where it simply cannot be ignored anymore. And episode 8 feels like the moment where that tension finally starts boiling over into something the family can no longer control. With Waqeen quietly turning against Rob Will, with Rip caught in a trap partly of his own making, and with Beth fighting to protect everything she has built, the entire ranch feels like it is heading toward a confrontation that nobody inside this family can avoid. What makes this even more interesting is thinking about what Rob Will himself is feeling during all of this. Does he already sense that something is shifting around him? Does he feel the ground moving beneath his feet, even if he cannot fully explain why? I think the most important shift happening in this entire episode is Waqeen finally turning against Rob Will in a way he has never done before. For years, Waqeen played the role of the quiet protector, the man who fixed every disaster Rob Will created without ever asking for credit or recognition in return. I believe Waqeen genuinely convinced himself that this kind of loyalty would eventually be rewarded, that Bula would one day look at everything he sacrificed and finally choose him to lead this family. Instead, in front of everyone who mattered, she chose Rob Will, the same man who has done nothing but bring chaos into this family since the moment he came back into their lives. That single decision broke something inside Walkan that I do not think can be repaired, and it is clear he no longer has any interest in protecting Rob Will the way he used to. Walkan handing over evidence to Sheriff Wade is not just an act of justice, and I do not think anyone watching closely would mistake it for one. This feels personal. After everything Walkan gave up, after years of standing in the shadows while Rob Will took credit, took power, and took the one position Walkan always believed he deserved, I think Walkan wants Rob Will to suffer the exact same way he has suffered, watching everything he built slip away in an instant with no warning and no second chance. But I do not believe Walkan stops at just one piece of evidence. I think episode 8 shows him taking this much further, possibly revealing where Wes's body was originally taken before it disappeared completely from anyone's reach. If Walkan says anything that connects back to Dutton Ranch property, even something small, even a detail mentioned almost in passing, I believe Sheriff Wade is going to immediately start connecting the dots back to Rip. And that is exactly where this episode takes a turn that I do not think anyone watching is fully prepared for. Rip never imagined that his loyalty to Beth, to this family, to the values they all claim to stand for, would one day put him directly inside the middle of a murder investigation. If Sheriff Wade starts looking closely at how Wes's body vanished without a trace, I believe Rip is going to have to make a decision he has been avoiding for a long time now, choosing between protecting himself or finally telling the truth no matter what it costs him. This is also where I think Walkan's betrayal becomes something much bigger than simple revenge against Rob Will. If Walkan is willing to go this far, exposing not just a piece of evidence, but the actual location tied to the body itself, I believe he may be preparing to approach Rip directly. Walkan needs information that only Rip actually has, and I think he is smart enough to understand that going after Rob Will alone simply will not be enough. He needs Rip's cooperation if he genuinely wants to see Rob Will fall completely and permanently. I believe this sets up one of the most tense moments of the entire episode, a possible meeting between Walkan and Rip, where both men have to decide whether they trust each other enough to work together against someone who has hurt them both in different ways. I do not think this conversation is going to be easy for either of them. Rip has every reason to stay cautious around Walkan, especially knowing exactly how dangerous it could become if word ever got back to Rob Will that Rip was secretly cooperating with an active investigation against him. Meanwhile, I believe Rob Will is starting to sense that something around him is shifting, even if he cannot fully explain what it is yet. With Bula trapped in a hospital bed, unable to control the family the way she always has, I think Rob Will is going to feel his grip on power slowly slipping away from him. And that is exactly the moment when I believe he becomes the most dangerous version of himself. A man who feels cornered rarely thinks clearly. And I do not believe Rob Will is the type of person who waits quietly while his enemies slowly build a case strong enough to destroy him. This is where I believe Carter becomes a target nobody saw coming. If Rob Will starts suspecting that people around him are quietly turning against him, I think he is going to lash out, and he is going to aim that anger at the people closest to Beth and Rip, rather than at the people directly investigating him. Carter is the easiest person for him to threaten, the one connection he can use to send a message without confronting Walkan or Sheriff Wade head-on. I would not be surprised if Rob Will sends someone after Carter, not necessarily to cause serious harm, but to make sure Beth and Rip understand one thing clearly, that he is still in control no matter what Walkan or Sheriff Wade are doing quietly behind his back. This kind of move fits exactly who Rob Will has shown himself to be all season. He does not fight fair, and he does not wait around to see how things play out. The moment he senses weakness in his own position, he looks for the fastest way to remind everyone around him who actually holds the power, even if that power is already starting to slip through his fingers. I also believe this episode brings Whitney's storyline back into focus, even if only briefly, and I think this matters more than people realize. I have said in previous breakdowns that Whitney may be holding on to information that could finally give Sheriff Wade the motive he needs to connect Rob Will to Wes's murder in a way that actually holds up. Even without a body, even without a completely airtight case, a clear and believable motive can be just as damaging in the eyes of the law as physical evidence. I think Episode 8 plants small hints that Whitney is preparing to come forward, possibly setting up her full return later in the season with the exact piece of evidence needed to finish what Walkan already started. By the time this episode ends, I believe the entire Dutton Ranch is going to look completely different from how it looked at the start of this season. Walkan has turned against Rob Will. Rip is being pulled deeper into a situation he cannot fully control. Beth is fighting to protect both her business and her family at the same time. And Rob Will, the man who genuinely believed he had already won everything, may be standing much closer to losing it all than he currently realizes. I think the next few episodes are going to decide who actually survives this power struggle once everything is said and done. And right now, based on everything building underneath the surface, I do not think things are looking good for Rob Will. Walkan has nothing left to lose. Rip is being cornered into a choice he cannot avoid forever. Beth is not backing down from anyone. And Carter, the one person with no real power in any of this, may end up being the spark that finally forces everyone else to stop circling each other and actually fight. Bula's heart attack did not just create a gap in leadership. It pulled the pin on something this entire family has been holding together through fear and loyalty for years. And Episode 8 feels like the moment everything finally comes apart at once.